Hi, in this video we will talk about acute flaccid paralysis. Let's start. So, acute flaccid paralysis is a clinical syndrome characterized by rapid onset of weakness. There is a rapid onset weakness in acute flaccid paralysis, progressing to maximum severity within several days to weeks. Fine. It progressed to maximum severity within what? Within several days to weeks. The term flaccid refers to the absence of spasticity or other upper motor neuron signs. Fine. What does the term flaccid here means? Refers to absence of any spasticity or upper motor neuron signs. Because in upper motor neurons lesions there is hypertonia, right? In the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, AFP is defined as any case of the flaccid weakness in children less than 15 years old or any paralytic illness at any age when the polio is suspected. Common causes of the acute flaccid paralysis are, what are the common causes of AFP? They are Guillain-Barré syndrome, transverse myelitis, traumatic neuritis, post-diphtheria neuropathy, and non-polio enteroviral illness. Fine. So, how many did we read about which can cause acute flaccid paralysis? First one is the GBS, second is the transverse myelitis, third is the traumatic neuritis, fourth one is the post-diphtheria neuropathy, and fifth one is the non-polio enteroviral illness. The differential diagnosis varies with the age. Distinguishing features are summarized in the table 20.10. This is the table. Uh, the differential diagnosis varies with the age. So this is the table that we have to read for the differential diagnosis of the acute flaccid paralysis. First is the muscle disorders, inflammatory myopathy, periodic paralysis, hypokalemia, and infections. Neuromuscular junction disorders, myasthenia gravis, botulism, and Eaton-Lambert syndrome. In neuropathies, Guillain-Barré syndrome, traumatic neuritis, post-diphtheria neuropathy, porphyria, vasculitis, and Bell's palsy. Anterior horn cell disorders, poliomyelitis, and non-polio enterovirus. Spinal cord disease, transverse myelitis, spinal cord compression, and trauma. Fine, so these are the differential diagnosis of the acute flaccid paralysis. There are a lot, right? Let's revise them once again. In muscle disorders, there can be inflammatory myopathy, periodic paralysis, hypokalemia, and infections. In neuromuscular junction disorders, myasthenia gravis, botulism, Eaton-Lambert syndrome. In neuropathies, there can be Guillain-Barré syndrome, traumatic neuritis, post-diphtheria neuropathy, porphyria, vasculitis, Bell's palsy. In anterior horn cell disorders, poliomyelitis and non-polio enterovirus. In spinal cord diseases, there can be transverse myelitis, spinal cord compression, or trauma. Major immunization initiatives have resulted in the sharp decline in the poliomyelitis across the world. The last case confirmed wild polio P1 type in India was reported from the West Bengal in January 2011. On 27th March 2014, the WHO declared India polio-free country in 2014, 27th of March. Since no cases of the wild polio were reported in the preceding 3 years, currently polio remains endemic in two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now, acute flaccid paralysis surveillance. AFP surveillance underpins the polio eradication initiative and is the chief strategy to screen for the circulating wild polio virus in the post polio eradication era. All the patients with the acute flaccid paralysis within the last 6 months should be reported to the surveillance medical officer of the WHO. Surveillance is done in a major four steps: finding and reporting the children with acute flaccid paralysis, transporting the stool sample for analysis, isolating and identifying the polio virus in the laboratory, mapping the virus to determine the origin. So, this all is done in the surveillance. Fine. Reporting the finding and reporting the children, transporting the stool samples, isolating the polio, and mapping the virus to the origin. These cases are immediately investigated within 48 hours of the notification by the trained medical officer. After confirming the case of acute flaccid paralysis, the investigator takes medical history and conducts examination. and proceeds with the other aspects of the case investigations, including the collection and transportation of the stool specimens for laboratory testing, search for additional cases, and outbreak investigation in the affected community. 60 days follow up examination, analysis of the laboratory results, and the case classification. Collection of stool specimen from every patient is an important aspect of the eradication strategy. From every case of the acute flaccid paralysis, two stool specimens are collected, ideally within 14 days of the onset of paralysis and at least 24 hours apart. Fine, so this is how stool sample collection takes place. From every case of one second. Yeah. From every case of the acute flaccid paralysis, two stool specimens are collected, ideally within 14 days of the onset of paralysis and at least 24 hours apart. While the optimal period for the detection of polio virus in the stool is within 14 days of the onset of paralysis, specimens may be collected from any late reported case up to 60 days from the onset of paralysis. Fine. In late reported case, specimen may be collected up to 60 days of the onset of paralysis. Okay. Beyond 60 days after the paralysis, the likelihood of detecting the polio virus is very low. Voided stool sample is preferred. In cases where it is not possible, other methods include the digital extraction when the child is constipated or dies. Postmortem stool examination, stool collection, contents of the large intestine, and the use of the rectal tube. Enema or the purgatives are not recommended. Each specimen should be 8 gram each. There's a size of specimen. Okay. Each specimen should be 8 gram each, about the size of an adult thumb, collected in a clean dry screw cap container. The specimens are collected, labeled, and then transported to the in the cold chain. Two types of cell lines are used for the poliovirus isolation. The human rhabdomyosarcoma cell lines favor the growth of all the enteroviruses, and the L20B cell lines favor the growth of only the polioviruses. Fine, there are two cell lines. This human rhabdomyosarcoma RD cell lines, they favor the growth of all the enterovirus, and this L20B cell lines favor the growth of only poliovirus. If the cytopathic effect appear in the L20B cell line, the isolate then goes for the neutralization test to determine the serotype, whether it is type 1, 2, or 3. Using the appropriate endosera, intratypic differentiation is done to determine if the isolate is wild or a vaccine poliovirus. Fine, then it is isolated to determine whether it's wild or vaccine poliovirus. The former isolates undergoes the genetic sequencing. A case is classified as polio if the wild poliovirus is isolated from the stool specimen. Fine. Then, when a case is classified as polio, if the wild poliovirus is isolated from the stool specimen. Cases with inadequate stool specimen and having residual weakness who have died or are lost to follow-up undergoes additional review by the National Expert Review Committee. This committee classifies the case as a compatible with the polio or discarded as non-polio acute flaccid paralysis. Experience indicates that at least one case of the non-polio acute flaccid paralysis occurs for every 1 lakh children aged less than 15 years per age. Background AFP rate. As per the National Polio Surveillance Project, the non-polio AFP rate, which is an indicator of the surveillance density, should be equal to or more than 1:1 lakh. Fine. Now let's read this. Differentiating the common causes of acute flaccid paralysis. So first we are going to read about the poliomyelitis, second one is the GBS, third one is the transverse myelitis, and fourth one is the traumatic neuritis. Let's start. Fever will be present in this poliomyelitis. In GBS they may have a prodrome. In transverse myelitis also may have a prodromal illness, but in traumatic neuritis it is absent. Fine, fever is absent in the traumatic neuritis. Second one is the symmetry. Two are symmetrical. Which one? Symmetrical is the GBS and transverse myelitis. Now talking about the sensations. Sensations are intact. In this poliomyelitis may have diffuse myalgias. Sensations are variable in GBS, impaired below the level of lesion in transverse myelitis, and impaired in the distribution of the affected nerve. Traumatic neuritis is basically injury of a peripheral nerve due to trauma. So there is impaired distribution of the affected nerve in the affected nerve. Respiratory insufficiency may be present in all except this traumatic neuritis, because respiratory insufficiency is not at all related to a damage to your peripheral nerve unless it is phrenic nerve, but it is not a peripheral nerve. Now talking about the cranial nerves affected in the bulbar and the bulbospinal variants, usually affected. So cranial nerves will be affected in both the poliomyelitis and the GBS. Affected in the bulbar and the bulbospinal variants and usually affected in the GBS. There will not be any cranial nerve involvement in transverse myelitis and the traumatic neuritis. Now the radicular signs, they may be present in poliomyelitis and GBS. Fine. So what are these radicular signs basically? It is like signs like sensory loss in that particular dermatome, or reduced muscle power, or diminished or absent deep tendon reflexes. These are the radicular signs, and they will be present in poliomyelitis and Guillain-Barré syndrome. Moving ahead to bowel bladder complaints, they will be absent in poliomyelitis, transient, late due to the autonomic dysfunction. They may be seen in the later stage of the GBS. They are present in the early stages of transverse myelitis, from the early stages in fact, and that is they are absent in the traumatic neuritis. So bowel bladder symptoms can be present in GBS and transverse myelitis. Transverse myelitis is basically no inflammation of the spinal cord, a particular section of spinal cord, not the complete, from a particular level only. Okay. Now the nerve conduction. Nerve conduction will be normal only in transverse myelitis. It may be abnormal in all of the other. And the CSF will be lymphocytic pleocytosis, normal or increased protein. In the poliomyelitis, there will be albuminocytologic dissociation. We read about this in the previous video, that there is cells are not increased, but the number of proteins is increased. That is the albuminocytological dissociation, which is seen in the GBS. CSF may be variable in the transverse myelitis and normal in traumatic neuritis. And the last one, MRI spine, is usually normal in all except the transverse myelitis, because it is a spinal cord problem, right? So yeah, this is all about the acute flaccid paralysis. Let's revise what we read in the fastest manner possible. Acute flaccid paralysis is a rapid onset weakness progressing to maximum severity within several days to weeks. Basically, there are various causes of the GBS that we just read in this table. There are various causes of acute flaccid paralysis: poliomyelitis, GBS, transverse myelitis, and traumatic neuritis. Fine. And there is something called as acute flaccid paralysis surveillance, in which we have to find and report the children, transport the stool sample for analysis, isolate and identify the poliovirus in the laboratory, and mapping of the virus to determine its origin. From every case, uh, okay, from every case of the AFP, two stool specimens are collected, ideally within 14 days of the onset of paralysis and at least 24 hours apart. And the specimen may be collected from any late reported case for up to 60 days from the onset of paralysis. Each specimen is about 8 grams, and it is transported in the cold chain. And the two types of cell lines are used for the poliovirus isolation. One is the human rhabdosarcoma, which this favors the growth of all the enterovirus. Another one is the L20P cell lines, which favor the growth of only poliovirus type. It can be different serotypes of poliovirus are present, type 1, 2, and 3. And a case is classified as a polio if wild poliovirus is isolated from the stool specimen. Fine. Yeah, this was all the important stuff that we need to know apart from this table. Thank you.